People who hold job interviews, what are the answers you want to hear to some of your most common questions? At an interview I was conducting, I asked the typical "what are some of your strengths" question. The kid's answer was, "Well, I'm not smart, but what I lack in intelligence I make up for in work ethic. It's dishwashing, I don't have to be smart." Smartest answer I've ever heard. Hard on the spot. Comma, it's dishwashing, I don't have to be smart. Comma, smartest answer I've ever heard. Wait a minute. At the end, when they say, "Do you have any questions?" I always ask, "Yes, why do you work here?" Every time I've used it, the interviewer has always appreciated it. It's a better way of asking, "Why do I want to work here?" and makes it more personal for the interviewer, who has probably interviewed 30 people by this point. If the interviewee doesn't know a reply to a technical question, just say they don't know, but this is how I would find out. I had a professor say to always follow up to questions you didn't know during your interview. I got an on-site interview which led to my current job by following up to a technical question in my thank you email. To be honest, I hate the entire interview process. Some people are really great at putting on a show and saying all the right things, but that tells me nothing about how good of an employee they will be. I use the interview more of a way to determine if they will be a good fit. The exact answers to the questions are partly irrelevant. I wouldn't have requested an interview if your resume, prior work, and education wasn't already sufficient to prove you're qualified. I just want honest responses, not scripted BS. I worked with a girl who would absolutely kill any job interview. Interviewing well was her secret weapon, but she had absolutely no discretionary skills. So if she couldn't cite it in policy, she couldn't make a judgment call. So she was a horrible employee who ended up getting fired. But she would interview circles around me and get any job we both applied for, no sweat. I want you to take a moment to think about my question and come up with an answer, not repeat back an answer you've been rehearsing for months. If you don't have an answer right off the bat, I have no problem with someone saying let me take a moment to think about that. I want to hire a human who I can work with, not someone who is going to give textbook answers to everything. I want to hear that you are interested in doing the job, know more or less what the position entails and can act autonomously. Also helpful is someone who is laid back and can have a laugh. I remember a candidate saying once that she needed a lot of micromanaging. CV binned. If someone sounds like a HR nightmare in the interview or gonna cause me aggro in that regard, I'll bin them as well. Sounds obvious, but always give examples relating to the question asked. Always be honest with your availability and say how you will fit in with the team. Share your interests and try to have a laugh, where appropriate. Ask questions about the company if you can, but don't be afraid to say you don't have any at the time. Nothing wrong with that. If you are personable and approachable, you'll more likely be remembered instead of your CV getting binned. Had a phone interview with a few candidates for a sysadmin position. One who had experience with Ms. Exchange seemed like a strong candidate. I asked him if he'd done a migration from the version we were on to the latest version, as we were considering doing the migration. When he came in for the face-to-face interview, he'd researched the migration process, printed materials with step-by-step instructions and gave it to me at the start of the interview. He said I could keep it and hoped it would help us with our upcoming migration. It did help, but not as much as hiring him to do it. As a person who has been interviewing for the past few months, the questions you ask as a job seeker are equally important. The employee-employer relationship is a two-way street. You should be interviewing the company as well. Some of the questions I ask, if not already covered in the interview. 1. What are the typical daily activities for the position? Schedule. 2. What qualities would you like to have in the next person filling this position? 3. Is this a new position? Where did the last person holding the position go? 4. Who would be training me and how will they do it? 5. What are the main goals for this position? 6. What are the challenges in this position department? 7. How does this position grow? Is there room for advancement? 8. What do you like about working for the company? I find that often these questions help me identify deal breakers in a company, like no room for advancement or finding out the company expects 60-hour work weeks. I agree with you. It boggles my mind how many people have no questions at the end of the interview. I'm looking for just a couple things. Are you a happy person? Do you seem pleasant to be around? Are you going to be nice to everyone? If I have a bunch of people qualified for the job, then all that I care about is those things. Basically, how pleasant are they going to be? My first interview after college, I got a call back a few days later and was offered the position on the phone. The hiring manager said you weren't the most qualified for the position, but I liked you, so we would like to offer you the position. I have always remembered this. If you don't know something, admit it. Don't BS. I may actually ask questions that are deliberately designed to test if you are a BSer. The only trick, if you can call it that, is that I want to hear about real professional experiences. Your personal work in the subject is a nice bonus, but you'll be rated on whether or not you've done it professionally. Also, that you don't use the same examples for multiple questions, even though it fits both, tells me your experience on those subjects is pretty narrow. If you are invited for the interview, your resume has already been looked over and it seems like you would be able to do the job. The interview is to assess 1. Were you lying on your resume? 2. Are you weird? The questions. What's the biggest mistake you've made? Name a time you overcame a problem, etc. are just to find out if you're someone that's going to freak out or hide a problem. No? Good. Moving on. Some weeks I spend more time at work than with my family. Are you someone that I can chat with, rely on? Someone I don't have to babysit how to send an email? Are you willing to learn? Do you smell bad? The interview is all about personality. Be honest, be yourself, and don't talk over the interviewer. I'm as honest as I can be, but awkward too. That has proven to be a hindrance, unfortunately. One tip I was told was in response to the question, what's your greatest weakness or what do you need to improve in yourself? Just say public speaking. I feel it's something that everyone understands and doesn't really put much negative light on you. The role I hire for is incredibly demanding and extremely well paid. I ask people to describe a time in their lives when they had just too much to do, maybe a deadline at work, and one of their kids is home with strep throat, and their parents are renovating their house so their parents moved in with them. How did they handle when they simply had too much to do for some period of time? Be honest about your flaws when we ask. Don't do that balls of "oh, my flaw is that I am a perfectionist, care too much, work too much" that they try to sell sometimes. Just say what you struggle with and how you are working to overcome it. When I'm interviewing, what I am most interested in is learning if this is a person that I want to spend, potentially, years of my life with. If I called you in for an interview, then I already think you can do the job based on your resume. Now, I just want to see if you're buttoned up, unfun, stick in the mud that I should pass over, or if you're someone that can crack a joke and make the workday better for all of us. I want to hear that you have given the question thought, instead of thinking about what I want to hear. I have no interest in working with people who are more concerned about what I think of them than they are with the actual job at hand. I don't know if this applies to all interviews, but I am currently hiring and ask people what their hobbies, passions are. I honestly don't care what it is as long as you are passionate about it. I find people who are passionate in a healthy way about pretty much anything are passionate about being a quality person as well. Just as long as what you are into isn't creepy or something. We're good if you're into bugs or trees or model trains. Unless you can get into more detail about why you are passionate about hiking and sports, I'm going to question whether you are actually passionate about anything. I hire business analysts and project managers for ops side, as opposed to tech side. In the investment management world, I always ask the interviewees a behavioral question about screwing something up personally, how the issue was addressed short term and what the long term takeaways were. I don't expect perfection. Everyone has made a boneheaded mistake at some point. What I'm trying to get at is how readily you can spot errors, how flexible you can be in solving them, and how creative you are for preventing repeat occurrences. Most people just try to convince me they haven't ever really messed anything up. Have a canned answer to those stupid greatest weakness type questions. I prefer not to ask those questions, but some of my colleagues do. The answer is rather inconsequential, but if you don't have a canned answer ready to go, it shows that you don't prepare. Just memorize something from online. Also, always have 4 or 5 upbeat questions for the interviewer. Ask about their favorite part of their job, why they chose the company, etc. This does two main things. It takes pressure off of the interviewer to keep the conversation going, and it helps you see red flags. If the interviewer seems stumped and can't name his or her favorite thing about the company, it's because it is a soul-sucking tomb. Truth. 1. Yes, I will be late. A lot. 2. Yes, I am self-entitled and expect you to overlook my childish behavior. 3. I know this interview is a formality. Just tell me when I'm starting. 4. Why yes, I will be an hour nightmare in 4 months. I'm waiting for a reason to sue your company too. Be able to succinctly and directly tell me why your skills and experience make you a great candidate for the position. You'd be surprised how many people apply for jobs that they don't seem to really understand what it is or what they'll be doing. This is such a softball. Every candidate for a job should be able to knock this question out of the park. When applicants fumble on this one, I immediately cross them off my mental list. You should be interviewing me as much as I am interviewing you. You should be asking questions about the role, the office, the culture, your responsibilities, etc. I want to know a terrible experience you've had with a customer and how you handled it. This might not be true for all employers, but I want honesty. I can't stand when someone throws a softball and crushes it out the park. I'd rather hear there was one customer who was yelling at me. I had to get the manager because I couldn't do anything. I'm polite, but I'm still a person who deserves to be treated with respect. Don't tell me how you got kicked around with a happy smile, went out your way, and didn't want to punch their head in. I know you're lying. It's less about having the right answer, and more about how you'd go about solving a problem. If I tell you this is a customer service job where you'll be answering phones, taking orders, and dealing with customer complaints, tell me about your previous customer service experience. I am looking for someone to tell me about answering phones, taking orders, and dealing with customer complaints. Source: I own a weekly meal prep company and have interviewed well over 200 people in the last 3 years. Not a job interviewer, but when an employer during an interview asks what's something you don't like about yourself, always says that you're sometimes forgetful, so you like to write things down. This is actually true in my case. I'm hoping someone asks me that, so I can bust out my planner and show my monthly view, weekly view, and daily to-do lists. Are you taking this job because you need it, or because you want it? I like to hear both. I don't want to hire someone who doesn't need the job, and I won't hire someone who doesn't want to work there. After getting hired and trained, I like to watch them while they don't think they're being watched. 1 in 4 of the people I hire actually show initiative. The other 3 coast along and follow, or flat out won't do anything unless they're told to do so. I manage lube techs. Most are ages 16-23 years old. Honestly, don't be afraid to refer back your resume. Chances are, employers looked at a fuck ton of resumes and didn't even read through all the fine details. Oh yeah, and provide an honest, detailed, and sincere answer to the why did you choose. Insert company or field here, don't whiff it. That should be the answer you prepared the most for. I hate that question. It's just asking candidates to lie. Not an interviewer, but someone who has had a fair share of interviews. I've found that spending 5 minutes researching a company and coming up with a question about said company will always win points. Remember, an interview goes 2 ways. I've also found companies have offered me higher than advertised salary packaging because I practically interviewed the company. If you are ever stuck in a pinch trying to think of a question to ask, a great one is, can I see the office space? Basically asking to look at the environment you will be working in. Again, you are interviewing the company as well as they are interviewing you. According to family legend, my mom was asked in a job interview, how much are you expecting to be paid for this position? She responded, 75,000. Interviewer, that's more than I make. Mom, quietly, then you probably need a better job. Hired on the spot, worked for him for 25 years. My mom is the master of confidence without arrogance. I am surprised I haven't seen anyone mention loyalty. I sat in some interviews last week and one person showed he was passionate and talked about how it was his dream job and he will be a lifer at the position. Knowing you won't need to hire the position for years is a huge burden off the managers. If you have jumped jobs a lot in the past, explain why. No one wants to hire someone that will be gone in 8 months. But if you can explain why you jumped positions, such as better quality of job, mismanaged department, something to at least explain why you worked for 5 different companies in the last 2 years. Talking negatively about past employers is an automatic DQ for me. If you can't figure out how to get your point across without talking bad about others, I have no use for you. We hold it as a panel of 3. I'm the one asking the technical questions, and I'll keep going with the questions until I hear. Paraphrasing here. 1. I don't know. Perfect. We are off to a good start. This is where, if not prompted by the interviewee already, I steer the questions to get them to either relate the topic at hand to something they are more familiar with, or give them an opportunity to ask about it. 2. I don't know but I can Google it, figure it out. You're definitely a candidate for the job. Honesty, open-minded to adopt new solutions, and proactive. What more can an employee ask for? 3. A made-up answer. I couldn't care less about this interview any longer. I don't bother with stock questions. I prefer a more conversational situation where I learn about the candidate and their experience. I interview people for new bartending positions all the time and have for years. If they are presently working in the industry, I want to know why they would leave their current job or bar restaurant to come work at the bar I work at. I want to know that they are deliberately wanting to work at the bar at which they are interviewing and not just work somewhere new. It can be as simple an answer as I like the people I have encountered coming into your bar and the staff are super professional, or I like the way you treat your guests and how you create an environment that is fun, inviting and focused on creating a wonderful atmosphere. I need to know that you have already somewhat invested in working at this bar as opposed to just working at any other bar outside of the one you are presently working. I need to know that you have already somewhat invested in working at this bar as opposed to just working at any other bar outside of the one you are presently working. I think this applies anywhere, not just with bars. Everyone interviewing should have a decent answer for this. Give them to me young, hungry, and stupid, and in no time, I'll make them rich. I'm the head of sales and account management, so I'm just looking for people who are excited about the company and can understand our vision. Everything else I could give less of a crap. Everyone bullshits anyway. That you have researched the company beforehand and can answer the most basic questions about some of our history practices. I interview for project manager, business analyst, and QA-led positions in my department. In these positions, knowledge of development methodology and their role in it is especially important, especially Agile and SDLC in general, and how they used variants and why. I'm also looking for clarity of thought. Candidates will always have several projects listed on their resume, and I'll pick an interesting one and ask them questions about it. Rather than specific answers, I'm looking for them to be able to impart at least a rudimentary understanding of their project. What was the goal? Who were the stakeholders? How did they interact? What challenges were there? And how did they overcome them? What did the system do? How was the data represented? How did they know it was done correctly? The answers should be concise, informative, and coherent. PS. I'm looking for 3 pages, max, in a resume. Anytime there's more, it's always a hot mess. If there's really that much, I expect it to be trimmed to 3 or less, which is focused on the position and skills I'm interviewing for. I hold interviews for faculty at the graduate doctorate level, and part of the interview day is a PowerPoint lecture on a predetermined topic. I don't really care what you talk about in the lecture, but sometimes there will be people in the audience who will ask questions that are purposely difficult to see how the candidate responds. If you don't know what they are getting at and they keep asking if there is anything else you would like to add, just say I am not sure of the answer. Is there something specific you would like me to elaborate on? Sometimes the person has a detail or specific thing they want you to say and they just keep saying anything else, anything you would like to add, what else, and it's just embarrassing for everybody. I tend to interview for graduate roles. We don't ask the cliche questions I'm seeing a lot of here. We ask behavioral based questions. I want to hear that you know the company you're applying for and that you actually want to work for us. Sure, if the options are working or winning the lotto, we'd all choose the lotto, but I want to know that you actually want to do this kind of work and it's not a last resort. I want to hear that you have a little ambition. Whether you want to be a technical expert or a leader, I want to know that you are chasing goals. I know you don't have a world of experience. It's absolutely expected that you reference your studies and casual work. If I ask a question about safety attitudes, you don't need to talk about the time you shut down a mine, when you stopped your colleague from sticking a knife and the toaster is totally fine. Just show me that you can think things through. We ask people a basic troubleshooting question about a desk lamp that doesn't turn on. We want them to explain their methodology for identifying the problem and resolving it. Hopefully they tell us things like, well, I try a known working light in that socket, or I swap bulbs to a like lamp, or similar steps that identify the problem, instead of blindly telling us they go look at the breaker box. I run a business unit for a large technology company. My group is comprised of stellar people who have built a strong sense of community and who are highly collaborative and supportive of one another. The team itself is really very special, so my leadership team and I are very selective and cautious about who we hire. We seek like-minded people. Honestly, I'm looking more at how someone is, how they handle being asked questions, how they present themselves, how they speak, and also really trying to assess personality. Give me examples and be proud of yourself. I don't care that you are an expert at bowl making. Tell me about the best bowl you ever made. I interviewed tons of people that give canned answers about what they can do but never talk about what they have done. Example: how do you deal with conflict in the workplace? What I always hear: I try talking to the person about their behavior, and if that doesn't work, I tell my supervisor. What I would like to hear: I once had a coworker harassing me in the workplace. I took that coworker aside and asked them to stop. I told them that this was unacceptable, and if it didn't stop I would involve my boss. Put me in your shoes so that I can see how you think. I want employees that solve their own problems. In general, you want to stick to the opportunity for which you're applying. So, if you're interviewing for a position in customer service, don't talk about a position in finance. Explain how you want to advance at some point, but be enthusiastic about the role for which you're applying. Anytime someone says, tell me about a time when, refer to the star bar method. Try to limit your response to no more than 30 seconds if you can. Anytime someone says, tell me about yourself, be genuine. Educational accomplishments or goals, and/or hobbies are great talking points. Anytime someone asks what interests you in the company, try to think of 3 quick points to narrow it down to. Don't be afraid to be specific. For example, if you've noticed a company does a lot of volunteer work and this is appealing to you, speak to that. 2 examples of good questions to ask a recruiter. Is there anything I can make more clear that may not be evident on my resume? What does a successful candidate look like in this position after training has been complete? If you want to expand further, try. How much precious training in the field of does the average candidate have? Hopefully these help someone. If they say yes to the question, are you legally required to do the sex offender shuffle, then say welcome aboard, especially at school interviews. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.